I'm here with Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Alexander, we have some more news on the U.S.-China negotiations and the fact that it doesn't seem to be progressing. We've done a lot of videos on this very topic, and I think it's very useful to revisit this topic over and over as the negotiations kind of start and stop, progress and stall. You know, I guess this is an evolving process. So, Alexander, what is the latest news and what is your take on where we are today with the U.S.-China trade talks?
Well, briefly, the U.S.-China trade talks stalled. They didn't get anywhere when they resumed in Shanghai. There was expectations that they might be trying to find a way forward, but it didn't really happen. The U.S. discovered that the Chinese have actually hardened their position since the previous talks. They're not prepared to go back.
As you predicted.
As we predicted, they're not prepared to go back to the previous deal. And they came back, the US negotiators came straight back to Washington. And the sequel was that Donald Trump imposed more tariffs on China, on the $300 billion of trade goods that passed between China and the US, which had not been subjected to tariffs up to now. To my mind, all this bears out what we have been saying in our videos for some time. The US and China are step by step working towards an economic divorce. The days of Chimerica, as it was called in countries like Britain, of the United States and China being two tightly integrated economies that traded so heavily with each other that you could almost talk about mutual dependency, that is ending. Both the Chinese and the Americans now accept intellectually and emotionally that their two countries are going in separate directions, and they are gradually beginning to reduce that trade connection that has underpinned their relationship up to now. So we saw Donald Trump acting defiantly towards China by, as I said, imposing all these tariffs. And we've seen in response from the Chinese, there's been a flurry of articles in the Chinese media in which they're saying that they're not going to give an inch and that the tariffs don't scare them or impress them. And of course, we see what the Chinese are going to do, which is that they're going to build up their One Belt, One Road initiative. But in reality, as I've said many times, that One Belt, One Road initiative is a way of concealing the underlying truth that we're talking about what the Chinese increasingly are calling the Russian-Chinese Grand Strategic Comprehensive Partnership. In other words, an economic, political, and other kind of multi-spectrum alliance. These are the two blocks that are emerging. They're going to be adversarial with each other, and we've just seen another big step being taken towards that.
Is this how it's going to go for like the next couple of years, Alexander? Or are we going to have like some sort of a definite conclusion to this? Or is it just going to kind of start and stop and both countries continue to build on separate paths till one day it's accepted? Or are we going to have an announcement where, you know, Trump or Xi or someone says, you know what, it's over, we're going our separate ways?
I think that they're going to want to take it step by step. I think certainly people in China do. There are some people in the United States, like Steve Bannon, for example, who would like a decisive break with China and talk in that fashion. And there are people like Navarro, who is Donald Trump's trade negotiator, who I think would quite like that also. The Chinese want to do this in an orderly way. And I think that the US ultimately will agree. I mean, for Donald Trump personally, for example, I don't think he wants a total trade breakdown with China, because at the moment, a lot of his own electoral base depends on trade with China, including the US's soybean farmers and people of that kind. But over time, step by step, that divorce will happen. And it will take a couple of years, but we're not talking about a very long stretch of time. And we've seen some people in Europe. I sent you an article by Martin Wolf in the Financial Times, who don't like it. They like to have what they call the international system, the globalist order, with Chimerica essentially at its center, preserved, because from their point of view, that creates a more orderly world, and it increases their own ability and the ability of their own countries like Germany, countries like Britain, to play off the various big economic blocks. But I think that is unsustainable, and I think we've got to accept that this divorce is now going to happen, and it's going to happen steadily and gradually, but at accelerating speed.
Right, Alexander, can you take like 2-3 minutes to close out the video and take your time to kind of give us a big picture view as to how the world is going to work around these two powers, the U.S. and China. Explain a little bit where Europe will find itself, where the U.K. will find itself with Brexit, and also, if you can, Alexander, if you can give a little bit of emphasis on maybe the Middle East, Africa, Latin America. Where do you think they're going to find themselves in this new, I guess you call it a new world system?
It is going to be a new world system, and it's going to be a bipolar system. Now, there's going to be two core areas. One is going to be the big Eurasian powers, China, Russia, the Central Asian states. I predict Belarus, and I'm going to say this, I know this won't be popular with some people. I think ultimately Ukraine as well. It's going to be drawn back into that orbit, as of course will Iran, as will Turkey, as will Afghanistan. And I would not be surprised personally if we see some parts of Eastern and Central Europe also attracted to this pole, and Germany in particular caught in a sort of tug of war between them. And the other great concentration of economic and political power will be the English-speaking states, those which already form the Five Eyes intelligence alliance: the United States, Britain, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, possibly South Africa too, by the way. But I suspect ultimately also most of the Latin American states, because the US is so dominant in that neighborhood. So these will be the two big poles of attraction. And I think there will be a pull in Central Europe, with Germany sometimes tilting towards the one, sometimes tilting towards the other. Germany's long-term economic interests, in my opinion, draw it more to the Eurasian camp, but it still has very strong political and emotional and, of course, alliance connections to the US camp. I think countries like on the Atlantic seaboard, like France, will always ultimately be more aligned with the US. And where will the contest be? It will be increasingly in Africa, crucially in the Middle East, which is where the oil, a lot of the oil still is. And we will also see some of the East Asian states, countries like Japan, Taiwan, Indonesia, the Philippines, Vietnam, trying to maneuver between these two great blocs. The Koreas might be drawn, I think, eventually towards Eurasia. The Japanese will probably stick with the US, but we will probably see something of a tug of war there also. So that's what's going to happen. It's not a crisis. Bipolar systems are not necessarily dangerous. On the contrary, they can make it easier to control conflicts, because if there is a conflict, let's say there's a war between two countries in the Middle East, and one alliance system backs one side and the other alliance system backs the other, that enables the two alliances to leverage the influence they have to structure compromises and impose on their respective clients, if not necessarily solutions, at least managed relationships. So we're not looking at a disaster or a catastrophe, but it does mean that the unipolar moment is going, that the United States, for a short time, assumed that it would be the great world hegemon. And it also means that sooner or later, despite what the United States is saying and doing at the moment, it will have to return to some form of arms limitation process, because it cannot match the Eurasians in manufacturing output. Their aggregate resources are greater than that of the United States, and they can outproduce it in weaponry as well as in everything else.
All right, Alexander Mercouris, Editor-in-Chief of the Duran. Thank you very much. Guys, if you like this video, click the subscribe button down below. Click on the notifications bell to make sure you get notifications every time we push out a new video. And of course, you can donate to us on PayPal, Patreon, and Subscribestar as well. And please don't forget, you can also get a copy of this video in audio format, so follow us on iTunes and Soundcloud. And also don't forget that you can get 2 ebooks on Russiagate with a foreword for each ebook written by Alexander Mercouris from our Duran shop, where you can also pick up great merchandise from polos to t-shirts, v-necks, stickers, as well as our world famous, one-of-a-kind original magic mugs. Alexander.
Absolutely. Can I just say something about the books? Because the 2 books which are about Russiagate are in fact indirectly related to this topic which we've been discussing. One of the reasons why Russiagate got so far out of control is that because we've had this unipolar period which is ending, there is so much anger within the United States at the fact that unipolar moment is passing, and that anger has infected the internal political system. So what we had in the United States was an attempt by the deep state and various sections of the deep state to support the one candidate who they thought would secure the unipolar moment, who was Hillary Clinton. And that led to a massive, out of control conspiracy to make her president and to discredit her opponent, Donald Trump, who wanted a more managed world. And then, when that failed, we had this strange, phony investigation to conceal the reality of the conspiracy which took place. That's what those 2 books are about. Firstly, the plot to make Hillary Clinton president. Secondly, the plot to prevent an investigation into that first plot by conjuring up Mueller. And in the case of the Mueller investigation, it took William Barr to bring it to a conclusion. So that's the story behind those 2 books. And you need to understand, you read those books to understand Russiagate. And what we've been discussing in this video gives you some explanation for it. Now, can I say, this is complex, intricate stuff. How do you write things like this? Well, you drink tea from magic mugs like ours. I now have 4, by the way. It gives you an idea of how much I drink tea from these mugs at the moment, that they're all in the dishwasher because they've all got dirty, because I spend all night long drinking tea, reading articles so that I can do videos like this with Alex, and so that with Alex also I can do books. But you get these wonderful mugs, you get these wonderful shirts like the one I'm wearing now, phenomenal shirt with a double-headed eagle, our double-headed eagle there on a hot day, perfect to wear overnight like I was doing last night. I was wearing this particular shirt actually through the night as I was tapping away on my computer, reading articles, and Alex is wearing an equally great shirt where he is in Cyprus on a glittering social occasion. So go to the Duran shop. Alex will tell you how. Get the books, get the shirts, get the mugs, get all the other nice things. Help yourself and help the Duran.
Yep, Duranshop.com, Duranshop.com, and the link is in the description box down below. Alexander Mercouris, thank you very much. Until next time, everybody, take care.